imagine you have been hearing about this Jesus from friends, maybe from family. He has been doing amazing things. He's been healing and casting out demons. He has been telling people about God. Some say he is God. But the thing that really gets you, the thing that really draws you to this man is that he speaks about another world. Another world that is also our world. Jesus says that it is close, it is near, it is possible. And we must be ready. And the way we must get ready is to live according to the values we find in this coming world, according to the love and justice of God. You hear in the words of Jesus that this coming kingdom will see the sources of our deepest stress and despair, the things that cause the pits in our stomachs and the weights on our chest to melt away. And you want in on this. And so you find Jesus and you say, I want to follow you. I want to live as a citizen of this new kingdom. In fact, I've already been practicing. I keep all the commandments. I am a good person. And ready to be received into the inner circle of disciples with a hug and a handshake. Instead, Jesus says to you, you lack one thing. Go, sell what you own and give the money to the poor, and you will have treasure in heaven. Then come follow me. So, my favorite detail in this passage, maybe the most important detail, is that before he responds to this man, we are told that Jesus, looking at him, loved him. As the Reverend Dr. Will Gaffney has preached, Jesus saw, quote, all the mistakes and wrong decisions, bad choices, hurtful words, anger and betrayal, dishonesty and disrespect, lust, greed and bigotry, whatever there was inside this man, Jesus saw it all and loved him anyway. End unquote. Start there. Always start there. The assurance of Jesus' love. And this man that Jesus sees and loves and knows so well finds the notion of letting go of those things he is asked to tragic, terrible enough to grieve. To grieve. A word associated with the loss of loved ones. I think this grieving response gives us a hint as to Jesus' dream for this man and the reason behind his specific request. Because it seems that at some point this man's many possessions have come to possess him. Have come to take on a meaning greater than they ought to. So great, they stand in the way of taking on that call he hears so clearly to follow Jesus. I like to imagine, or I guess I hope, that this man eventually came around. But he went home, and he sat, and he considered, and he prayed. I like to imagine that he met Jesus' challenge. That he did sell his many things and returned to him. Because I hope he got to catch a glimpse of the vision that brought him to Jesus in the first place. That coming world that offers freedom from all those things that possess us. But it is also important to remember that when Jesus speaks to this man, he's also surrounded by a crowd, hanging on to every word, ready to spread it to the next person and the next person. Probably the way this man heard about this itinerant preacher in the first place. And that crowd, in that time and that place, was living in a world where the concentration of wealth was in the hands of a small, elite group, at the expense of an impoverished majority of the population. Huge estates were created and maintained thanks to the exploitation of landless laborers. The pressure on the poor was immense, with factors such as overpopulation, overcultivation of the land, natural disasters, and increasing tributes and tithes. These all combined to force the already poor majority into an arduous struggle for mere survival. So it is within these human-made conditions, these systems, these attitudes, these policies, that Jesus speaks. To this man and to all those gathered living within these systems. Wealth and poverty, both likely present and accounted for among his listeners. And it is under not dissimilar conditions that Jesus encounters us today, in this context, here and now. And he is still loving us and still challenging us to see the systems that allow for poverty to exist in the first place, to learn about them, and to work toward dismantling them. Challenging us to feel the water that we swim in and to imagine something new. To believe that something new is possible. As the Reverend Dr. Raquel Letzum puts it, Jesus' instructions to this man and to us seek to, quote, remediate economic practices that consign the majority of people to poverty. To be a disciple forbids oppression of the poor and protects the least of these, unquote. So, yes, for those who have asked, and they do ask, the gospel is political. It is anti-oppression. It is anti-poverty in a world that is so often anti-poor people. And this is, I think, particularly helpful truth for me to have top of mind during an election season. When we go to the polls, I believe we can and we should bring the gospel with us. Have God's vision and special concern for the poor and the marginalized in the forefront of our minds as we discern. Because sometimes our decisions may benefit the marginalized at the expense of our own comfort or wealth or power. This, too, is a step toward that freedom that Jesus challenges us to. Now, please, do not worry. I am not now or ever going to tell you how to vote. But I do think that creating forums to help us all get more informed about those decisions often goes unrecognized as the holy work of discipleship that it is. And I am so glad that we are doing that work as a church community here at St. John's. I was happy to be with many of you at the League of Women Voters ballot initiative primer that we had last week. And I hope to see you at the Ballots and Burgers event taking place next week after the 10 a.m. service. You'll hear more about that during announcements. So yes, I think Jesus is speaking to the individual, to each one of us, and to the collective this morning with his famous or perhaps infamous warning about the camel fitting through that eye of that needle. I think he is pushing us to, yes, let go of our excesses which only serve to weigh us down, and to see the larger picture of the oppressive structures that allow poverty to exist in the same world that also contains unimaginable wealth. I think he is asking us to imagine something so much better. Because a world without poverty would mean freedom for not only the poor, but for all of us. That is the freedom of the kingdom of God.